Jacob.
How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good, good. So, are we gonna dig right in, or was there something you wanted to talk about before we dug right in?
I actually have a question. So we can a question we can. I guess I can either say it now or in the end.
Let's do it now.
So my question is, and I don't think we touched on it. I think I heard it in one of the Hasidus class that I went to in like my local Chabad, and it was talking about teva as and the way that the I guess the previous Rebbe was referring to it was that it's not what I initially thought about, where in terms of teva is the nature is like your natural inclination is to be like an animal. No, your
Mhm.
natural inclination is actually to be godly because that is the nature of your godly soul.
Mhm.
So, does that sound familiar?
Well, I mean, there's a so when we talk about nature, right? So there's a dichotomy in Hasidus and Judaism in general, I would say, which actually kind of reflects um, what Paul Vanderklay sometimes refers to as God 1 and God 2.
Yeah.
And so we talk about Shem Havaya and Shem Elohim, right? The Tetragrammaton and the name God, right?
Hmm.
And actually, this kind of goes with Lonely Man of Faith, right? So he talks about Adam Kadmon and Adam Rishon, right?
Hmm.
So the weird thing about it is when you look in Genesis and you see the first creation story,
Yeah.
it doesn't use Shem Havaya at all.
Hmm.
It only uses Shem Elohim.
Hmm.
And the way the rabbis explain it is noise. Um, the way the rabbis explain it is God at first wanted to create the world in a manner of din, in a manner of how things should, should ideally run, should ideally, and he saw that the world could not continue in that manner. And so he had to introduce Shem Havaya, he had to introduce the concept of mercy into the
Hmm.
world. So, in a what appears to be somewhat self contradictory way, when we talk about how things should be, lachatchila, right? In their very beginning, how they should be, it is an aspect of pure din, of pure um, causation, right? Um, I talk about Cain and Abel a lot, right? So what what would be the normal way of dealing with the fact that Cain killed Abel? God should kill Cain and raise Abel from the dead, right? That's justice. That's restoration of how things should be. But that's not how. And so when we talk about Teva, we talk about Shem Elohim. We talk about chain of causation. We talk about the rules and the laws as it should be.
Yeah.
And in a sense, you could relate that to the animal and material world but yeah, this conflict, this incoherence is is the very nature of theodicy. It's the very nature of the struggle we have, right?
Mhm.
Um, did that address what you were thinking about at all?
Um, Maybe part of it. I mean, I guess. Yeah, I mean, I guess you were kind of like talking about um, mercy and justice, and how. Yeah, I mean, I know that like the Elohim is connected to Teva,
Mm,
in terms of, so there is one aspect that the name, he is connected to Teva, to nature, which means that he is nature, or and he controls nature. So all the patterns, all the laws come from, he sustains them.
right.
And yes, so my the pilpul, the thing that I'm referring to is, I
Mm,
think, slightly different. Is that because I was asking this because somebody was like the I was it was somebody was asking me about what is the opposite of culture,
mm,
but and one way he was thinking about it is teva. So then I was reminded by this the Hasidic commentary, is that teva is not what you naturally do. It's not what C.S. Lewis has about, like, I naturally feel an inclination to kiss this woman, so it's just natural for me to do it.
right.
Um, it's actually, nature is actually connected to the godly soul. So you behaving in an ungodly way is you actually betraying or moed, or
Mm.
rebelling against the godly nature that you are
Uh,
supposed to that you're supposed to um, project, or
so okay, let's talk about garments which hide and reveal,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
So uh, a garment in one way is something that hides, but it's
Mhm.
in another way it's something that reveals,
Yeah.
right? Because if you cannot look directly at something, right? Like God being infinite, we cannot see him directly.
Yeah.
But we talk about the garments of the king. We talk about those things which veil God. But in the fact that they veil God, they also reveal him,
Right.
right?
Mhm.
And part of the inherent contradiction that we have to deal with is, yes, we we have a Yetzer Hara, but the Yetzer Hara also comes from God,
Right.
right?
Mhm.
So Rahmana Abed Latav Abed, everything that God creates, He creates for the good,
Mhm.
right? And so there's there's that contradiction always inherent in that which doesn't appear to be um, lachatchila, doesn't appear to be as it should be,
Right.
right? Um, Maybe I'll go back to one of my favorite stories, which I'm sure I've told you several times, but I like telling it, so I'm going to tell it again. Um, hey, Billy, there is told of Rabar of Medishbush and Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Berdichev and the Alter Rebbe, the author of the Tanya. Early in the morning, they were walking down the street and they see a Jew who's wearing his talit and his tefillin and has his prayer book in one hand, and with the other hand, he's shoveling muck, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's working on behind his horse, shoveling dirt, right? And obviously, this is not how you're supposed to be saying your prayers. This is not what you're supposed to be doing, right? And Reb Baruch of Medishbush, who was he was a close relative of the Baal Shem Tov, like a cousin or a nephew or something like that. And he was fabulously wealthy, and he was known as being a very stern man. And he got very upset, and he said, "If I were God, I would strike that man down where he is, and everyone would know that this is not how you say your prayers, and this is not how you treat your talit and your tefillin, right?" And Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Berdichev, he was known as Ohev Israel, the one who loves Israel. And he famous for his book Kedushat Levi, which is a commentary on the Bible. And very similarly, I mean, it's a very kindly man, right? And the Rabbi Levi Yitzchak says, "Oh, if I were God, I would make this man fabulously wealthy. And he would never, ever have to interrupt his prayers by having to do menial work. He would be able to sit and pray well." And the Alter Rebbe, who was the youngest of the students of the Maggid, spoke last, and he said, "If I were God, the world would be exactly as it is." Right? So the world exists in the best way possible. Now, for me, if it was up to me, the guys doing construction probably wouldn't be doing it right now, right? But for some reason, God sees that the best way for the world to exist right now is for me to have that example of this loud noise to talk about, right? It is lachatchila. God has created this world in this weird way where this is the best way it can actually be.
Yeah.
And my guess is that the point in that Hasidus class is precisely about that. It's precisely about how you would think that maybe if David HaMelech had never seen Bathsheba and had not decided to send her husband and to sin in all the ways that he did, you might think the world would be such a better place. But the fact is, Shlomo HaMelech was his son from Bathsheba, right?
Yeah.
And ultimately, Mashiach comes from the sin of Bathsheba. And that is the inherent contradiction, right? William says, from God's point of view, Candide may be the best play, but mere humans can't choose that view. It goes back to ultimately the that one scene in the Bible that Grim Grizz finds so weird and objectionable, where Moses asks to see God's glory, and God says, no one can see my face and live. Right? No one can see God's face and live. We can only see from after God passes by. Because if we were to understand how even those things which we view to be sinful, it is an absolute horrible mistake to think that our sin is itself good. At the same time, it is idolatry, it is avodah zarah, it is the worst of sins to think that our sins allow us to defeat God. Right?
Yeah.
Ultimately, that even those ways in which we sin and we fail ultimately lead to the best possible of things, and that is inherently self-contradictory and difficult to understand, and that is actually part of the point, is our acknowledgement that we cannot understand. That's why we need the book of Job. That's why we need Sefer Yov. For God to tell us, guess what? Yeah, you don't get it. Accept that. You don't get it. You're not going to get it.
Yeah.
And in a very real sense, Chassidus is trying to help us understand merely that we don't get it.
Yeah. I think that it's good. I think it adds. I would probably need to listen back to this. But yeah, I mean, this is a difficult thing to understand.
Yeah. Weiter?
Weiter.
You're going to read or should I read?
I can go for it.
You go.
Okay. Am I prepared?
You're always prepared.
Okay. והנה, מודעת זאת מאמר, רבותינו זיכרונם לברכה, שתכלית בריאת עולם הזה הוא, שנתבע הקדוש ברוך הוא להיות לו דירה בתחתונים. In a well-known statement, our rabbis declare that the purpose for which this world was created is that the Holy One, blessed be He, desired to have an abode in the lower realms. Where does this come from, actually? What does he cite? Midrash Tanchuma? Okay.
Yes.
והנה לא שייך לפניו יתברך בחינת מעלה ומטה, כי הוא יתברך ממלא כל עלמין בשווה. So, but surely before God, in his sight, the distinction of higher and lower is not valid. One world is no higher than another, for he pervades all world equally. So what then do the sages mean by God desired an abode in the lower realms? Ela biur ha'inyan. The explanation is as follows. כי קודם שנברא העולם היה הוא לבדו יתברך יחיד ומיוחד, הוא ממלא כל המקום הזה שברא בו העולם. Before the world was created, there was only he alone, one and unique, filling all the space in which he created the world. וגם עתה כן הוא לפניו יתברך. In his view, it is still the same now. So there was no change by creation, there was no change in him. רק שהשינוי הוא אל המקובלים חיותו ואורך יתברך. המקבלים חיותו ואורו יתברך. The change applies only to the recipients of his vivifying force and his light. שהם מקבלים על ידי לבושים רבים המכסים ומסתירים אורו יתברך. who receive this life force and light by way of numerous garments, which veil and conceal God's light. כדכתיב, כי לא יראני האדם וחי. So it is written, and like we said, for no man can see me and live. Okay, וכדפירשו, רבותינו זיכרונם לברכה, שאפילו מלאכים הנקראים חיות, אין רואים וכולי. And as our rabbis of blessed memory interpret the word chai and live to refer also to angels, even angels called chayot cannot see. וזהו עניין השתלשלות העולמות וירידתם ממדרגה למדרגה. This concealment is the subject of the ishtalshalut, the chain-like graded and downward succession of the worlds and their descent from level to level. על ידי ריבוי הלבושים המסתירים האור והחיות שממנו יתברך. Through the many garments that conceal the light and the life force emanating from him. עד שנברא העולם הזה הגשמי והחומרי ממש, culminating in the creation of this physical gross world. Actually reminds me, just as an afterthought, because I'm just going through the Rambam as well, but he talks about in the guide about how God is like the heart of the universe, or God is likened to a heart. So he is the center, he's vivifying the whole universe, just like the heart is vivifying the body. But unlike the heart, he doesn't get anything in return. And he's also, so he doesn't get anything in return. And like the Tanya, he says, he doesn't change from that relationship. So yeah, they just reminded me that. והוא התחתון במדרגה, שאין תחתון למטה ממנו, בעניין הסתר אורו יתברך וחושך כפול ומכופל. This world is the lowest in degree. There is none lower than it in terms of concealment of his light. And no world compares with it for doubled and redoubled darkness. עד שהוא מלא קליפות וסטרא אחרא, שאין נגד השם ממש, לומר, ani ve'efsi od. So much so that it is filled with klipot and sitra acha, which actually oppose God, saying, I am and there is nothing else beside me. So I have this image, mythical image of, so I'm going to ask this just to kind of get clarification on this, but I have this mythical image of the world underneath us, Gehenom or the Sheol being underneath us. So wouldn't you say that is a place that is further away from God?
That is a Christian cosmology.
Yeah,
that
that's
doesn't.
I know, but I wanted to ask it because it's still in my mind.
Yeah, it doesn't really correspond with a Jewish understanding of cosmology.
Mm-hmm.
So there is, and frankly, many Christians would say it doesn't even correspond with a Christian cosmology.
Mm-hmm.
Because, so what does it mean? So we talk about the olamot, Atzilut, Bria, Yetzirah, and Asiyah, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so what does it mean, for example, that when you are saying certain prayers, you are in a world of Bria or Yetzirah? How is that? Do you cease to exist in the world of Asiyah?
No.
So what you have is, you have the spiritual worlds constantly coexisting.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens is sometimes we align with the spiritual worlds of Kedusha, and
Yes.
sometimes we align with the spiritual worlds of Sitra Achra and Klippa. Okay?
Negative flow, evil flow, and good flow.
In a sense, right?
Yeah.
And so when you, chas v'shalom, are cut off from the sides of Kedusha, right?
Mm-hmm.
At a moment of sin, right? Kol minei gehinom sholtin bo, right?
Yeah.
All manner of hell is sholet, is rules over who you are and what you are, right?
Yeah.
So that isn't something that's physically distant from us. It's something that's spiritually distant from us. And the fact is, it's not even temporally distant from us. Because, in a very real sense, because God views us from outside of time, right? So, really, you're getting into the real question of exactly what Tanya has been saying from beginning. How does Tanya start, right? You have tzaddikim and you have rashaim. And what's a tzaddik and what's a rasha? A tzaddik is somebody who does good, and a rasha is somebody who does evil,
Mm-hmm.
right? And at that moment that you are doing good, you're a tzaddik gamor. And at that moment that you do something evil, you're rasha gamor, right? So what is this idea that you have people who aren't, that you have this concept of a Bainani, and you have this concept of some sort of fight, some sort of, and the way we understand that is that there are different ways of viewing the same thing at that time, at that place. There are different frames which work, right? There's me at the moment when I do a sin,
Mm-hmm.
and well, thank you very much, CW. Although I have to say, in the future, please give that money through PayPal to Fountain of Comfort, because I hate the fact that you just gave $20 to YouTube that you didn't need to give. And the fact is that the money through YouTube comes directly to me. Not that that matters, but the money to Fountain of Comfort goes to the 501c3. It's a tax deductible donation for you, but it also has more accountability so that people will actually think. But thank you very much. And I'm wondering where you found where it says bracha v'hatzlacha with, and it's menukad. So you obviously didn't type it out yourself. Bracha v'hatzlacha means blessing and success. Thank you very much. Amen. And Rabbi Donnie is listening. Rabbi Donnie, who needs to jump on stream every once in a while. We would love to have Rabbi Donnie on.
Yeah.
But back to our regular scheduled programming. Talking about seeing things from various levels of interpretation simultaneously, right? Mm-hmm. So, and really what he's talking about here, right? There's one level of interpretation, there's one level of viewing things which is from God, And in that manner, there is no change in God whatsoever, and God is everywhere shaveh. He's everywhere equally, and
Yeah.
everything is equally both holy before Him and as nothing before Him, right? But there,
So
yeah,
is the example? I'm trying to think of an example. Is the example the brothers of Yosef, where or because I mean
that
we're
is
talking
an example.
right? Yeah. So it's one thing that is two things
It
simultaneously. I mean, I think the Talmud talks about it. I only only briefly learned the Talmud, like one thing from the Talmud, and I can use it in various ways. It's very cool.
that's the beauty of the Talmud.
Yeah, but like in the Talmud, it says like if you like, there's actually two realities. It's almost like a portal into various realities where you give away guardianship of a cat of something, of a cow maybe, that you want somebody to guard for you while you're away, a possession of yours. Then if they lose it in the future, then they owned it at the moment where you gave him the thing. But if they didn't lose it, then you actually didn't give them the ownership for it. So it's actually two things at the same time, depending on what happens in the future, something like that. So it's very interesting.
Yeah, the Talmud has these types of things a lot. There is that capacity to see things in multiple ways, an essential lesson of being Jewish.
Mm-hmm.
And it's essential, particularly because we are monotheists, right? And we see in the world things that are not according to God's will.
Right.
And we have to understand that things exist not according to God's will, according to God's will.
Mm-hmm.
It is God's will that things exist which are not according to God's will.
Yeah.
Right? And how that contradiction is not a contradiction is it is a contradiction. And we accept it as a contradiction. Right? And that's why we learn to actually say ad matai. How long will this persist?
Right.
Because
Yeah.
we hope for the time when we will also be able to see from God's view, and that the contradiction will in fact be nullified.
Okay. Yada. Um, so, והנה תכלית השתלשלות העולמות וירידתם ממדרגה למדרגה אינו בשביל עולמות העליונים. The purpose of the השתלשלות of the worlds, the going down from world to world and of their descent from level to level, is not for the sake of the higher worlds. הואיל ולהם ירידה מאור פניו יתברך. Since for them this constitutes a descent from the light of his countenance. אלא התכלית הוא עולם הזה התחתון. Rather, the purpose of השתלשלות is this lowest world. שכך עלה ברצונו יתברך, להיות נחת רוח לפניו יתברך, כד התקפיה סיטרא אחרא, והתהפך חשוכה לי נאורה.
Wow, yeah, that was your best Aramaic yet.
So can I sit at dinner now with your family and they speak Aramaic so I can
well, I have a very hard time understanding when they speak Aramaic, mostly because of all the Turkish and Russian words in their Aramaic. You have to realize when they speak Aramaic, this is modern day, it's called Neo-Aramaic.
Mm-hmm.
And so while the basic structure comes from Aramaic, there's a lot of Russian and Persian and Turkish intermixed into their Aramaic. Yeah.
Oh,
They don't speak Imperial Aramaic of 2,000 years ago, unfortunately.
I see. Okay, so shekachala bertzono. So thus the purpose of ishtalshelut is this world. For such was his will that he find it pleasurable when the sitra acha is subjugated to holiness, and the darkness of klipa is transformed into holy light. שיאיר אור השם אין סוף ברוך הוא במקום החשוך, החושך והסטרא אחרא של כל עולם זה כולו. So that in the place of the darkness and sitra achra, throughout this world, the Ein Sof light of God will shine forth. Beyeter sat, I never get this right.
Set.
Beyeter set, veyeter oz, ויתרון אור מן החושך, מהארתו בעולמות עליונים, with greater strength and intensity and with the superior quality of light that emerges from the darkness. I.e., when darkness is transformed into light, the resulting light is superior to ordinary light. It will thus shine with greater intensity than its radiance in the higher worlds.
Yeah, this is the thing we talk about very much, right? That Yitron ha'or min ha'chosha. The greatness of the light is from the fact that we have experienced the darkness.
Right, and reflected in the place where the Baal Tshuva stands, no tzaddik can stand. שמאיר שם על ידי לבושים והסתר פנים, המסתירים ומעלימים אור אין סוף ברוך הוא, שלא יבטלו במציאות. There in the higher worlds, it shines through garments and through concealment of the countenance, a concealment of the pnimiyut, the internal aspect of the light, which conceal and screen the Ein Sof light, so that the worlds do not dissolve out of existence. So he's saying that we need this ishtalshelut, or these worlds, because they act as concealment, as something,
as a veil. So
we do not dissolve.
One example that the Rebbe used to use was that of a nuclear reactor, right? So if there is a nuclear reaction going on, you cannot be in the same room with it, right? You can't be there with it because it is because it is so bright, it will destroy you. So if you have a lead covering on this radioactive material, right, it allows you to be near the radioactive material without being destroyed.
Yeah, to a small extent, it's like going to the dentist, and they tell you, or any kind of other X-ray.
Lead, yeah, and there you go. Yeah, it's protecting you so that you can be closer. And in a very similar sense, the seder hishtalshelut, right? This concealment allows for us to exist as if we are separate from God.
Yeah. ולזה נתן הקדוש ברוך הוא לישראל, הקדוש ברוך הוא לישראל את התורה, שנקראת עוז וכוח. For this purpose, the Holy One, blessed be He, gave Israel the Torah, which is called might and strength. For it gives us strength to receive such revelation without being overwhelmed by it. I need to reflect on that a little bit. וכמאמר רבותינו זיכרונם לברכה, שהקדוש ברוך הוא נותן לכוח בצדיקים לקבל שכרם, לעתיד לבוא. And as our rabbis say, that God gives tzaddikim the strength to receive their reward in the world to come. So it's asking here, why is this strength necessary to receive the reward? שלא יתבטלו במציאות ממש באור השם הנגלה לעתיד בלי שום לבוש. So that their existence, that tzaddikim, should not dissolve within the divine light that will reveal itself in the hereafter without any garment.
So eventually there's going to be this revelation of godliness, right? A complete revelation of godliness. And how is it that once that revelation is made, it won't be as if we never existed to begin with?
Okay, sorry, I'm writing notes. כי דכתיב ולא יקנף עוד מורך, פירוש שלא יתכסה ממך בכנף ולבוש, והיו עיניך רואות את מורך. As it is written, and your teacher will no longer hide from you. Kanef.
Yeah, so it uses the word kanaf.
Kanaf, like a wing or...
Yeah, like a wing, exactly, in Isaiah 30, verse 20. And there, the word kanaf is used to mean to hide. Right?
Yeah, so as it is written, and your teacher will no longer hide from you, meaning, not as some interpret the verse, he will no longer withhold your reins. Following Rashi, he will no longer conceal himself from you with the edge of a robe or garment, and your eyes will behold your teacher. Yeah, I can see the image of like the teacher he has a robe, he kind of puts it like this, like a wing.
Yeah.
And then he conceals himself.
Yeah.
Uktiv ke'ayin be'ayin yiru v'chulei. And is also written, for they shall see eye to eye, meaning that the human eye will see as the divine eye sees. He will clearly see the revelation of God's light. וכתיב, לא יהיה לך עוד השמש לאור יומם, כי השם יהיה לך לאור עולם. And it is further written, the sun shall no longer be your light by day, for God will be your eternal light.
Okay, give me 1 minute. I will be right back.
Sounds good. Oh no. Interesting. Maybe I can read this note while we're at it. So the strength to receive this light, which will shine forth in the world to come, without garment or concealment, we derive from our present study of the Torah. So the Alter Rebbe stated earlier that the purpose of the entire Ishtalshelut, the movement from the creation of world to world to world, is the revelation of the Ein Sof light in this world, which occurs when the darkness of the klipot of this world is transformed into the light of holiness. But one may ask, this revelation will take place only in the hereafter. At present, the Ein Sof is completely hidden. The Alter Rebbe replies that indeed the Messianic era constitutes the purpose for which this world was created. So the Messianic era being similar to light.
Mm-hmm. A revelation of the light.
Revelation.
Yes.
And there was actually something interesting that I learned from the Rambam, so there is some. He says that this is in the Mishnah Torah. He says that if you only have a nickel, and you can only buy either a Hanukkah candle or a Shabbat candle, what should you do? And he said you should buy a Shabbat candle, because by lighting the Shabbat candle, you're fulfilling the purpose of Hanukkah, which is to shine a light or brighten the world. So it made some connection So it seemed to make some connection between Shlom Bayit, peace,
Mm-hmm.
because that is also the purpose of the candles, and giving light to the world. So we have peace, Messianic era, and light.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't think I have a question there, but it's just something that.
This is. I mean, this is one of the very popular, like, so asking this type of pill pool of like, okay, he says this, why is it? It's actually quite popular way of bringing out the spiritual significance of a particular halacha.
Mhm.
Uh, if you only have the possibility of doing this or that, this is
Right.
actually, I mean, it's part of the Brisker method. So you are being indoctrinated into the Jewish methods of hermeneutics. I congratulate you.
Mhm.
Though your move to Texas has obviously been how many Febrengans have you been to?
I mean, it's Kislev, right? So there might be some there, but I did.
Yes.
We did. Yeah, we did have. I had some vodka a few days ago.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the important thing. That's
Mhm.
you can tell how much of a Chabad Chassid somebody is by how much vodka they drink. I'm joking, but yeah, 19th of Kislev. I wonder what it's going to be like. Hopefully, it will be a very nice. It will be very good. Max is possibly coming down to Los Angeles for 19th of Kislev, but yeah. Donnie, I highly, highly recommend spending 19th of Kislev with some Hasidim, as opposed to your normal chevra. You might have fun. God have mercy on your soul. Um, yeah. Okay. Weiter.
אוקיי, ונודע
Mm-hmm.
שימות המשיח, ובפרט כשיחיו המתים,
Mm-hmm.
so also the resurrection of the dead, and we can add to light, peace. So it is known that the Messianic era, especially the period after the resurrection of the dead, הם תכלית ושלמות בריאת עולם הזה, שלכך נברא מתחילתו, is indeed the ultimate purpose and the fulfillment of the creation of the world, of this world. It is for this purpose that this world was originally created. So let's read this, the note. At first glance, this statement appears strange. One would have thought that the Messianic era represents not the purpose of creation, but the reward for men's efforts towards fulfilling that purpose. So the Alter Rebbe clarifies. וקבלת שכר עיקרו באלף השביעי, כמו שכתוב בליקוטי תורה מהארי, זיכרונו לברכה, the time of receiving the reward is essentially in the 7th millennium, as is stated in Likutei Torah of the Arizal of blessed memory, whereas the period until then constitutes the fulfillment of the world's purpose. וגם כבר היה לעולמים מעין זה בשעת מתן תורה. A glimmer of this revelation, which will take place in the future, has already been experienced at the time of the giving of the Torah at Sinai. כדכתיב אתה הראת לדעת כי השם הוא האלוהים אין עוד מלבדו. As it is written, you have been shown to know that God is the Lord, there is nothing else besides him. הראית ממש בראייה חושית. You actually revealed yourself, literally made yourself seen, indicating that the revelation was in a manner perceptible to physical sight. כדכתיב, וכל העם רואים את הקולות, רואים את הנשמע. So it is written, and all the people saw the thunder, they saw what is normally heard. ופרשו רבותינו זיכרונם לברכה, מסתכלים למזרח ושומעים את הדיבור, יוצא אנוכי וכולי. As our rabbis explain, they looked eastward and heard the divine speech issuing forth, saying, I am God your Lord. Interesting. Is there anything here with eastward that is that don't know about?
I mean, Mizrach generally is where we talk about. I mean, so one of the things, while we say we pray towards Jerusalem, oftentimes we say Mizrach, right?
Yeah.
And Mizrach comes from the word Zorea,
Right.
right? To right. So Mizrach is the place where it begins to shine, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, um, yeah, Mizrach is Mizrach.
Yeah. Okay. וכן לארבע רוחות ולמעלה ולמטה, and so too turning towards the 4 points of the compass and above and below. So they heard the words coming from every direction. וכדפירשו בתיקונים דלית עתה דלה מליל מיניה אימאון וכולי.
Pretty close. Mine
Mine.
imhon.
Mine, the hay is killing me
Yeah, it's
at the end.
that's in Aramaic, right? So that it's that nun with a tsere, yud, and hey. That's all basically just one one sound.
Yeah.
Mine. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, as explained also in Tikkunei Zohar, there was no place from which he did not speak to them, like full blown stereo. והיינו, מפני גילוי רצונו יתברך בעשרת הדיברות. This was so because in the 10 commandments, his blessed will was revealed. שאין כללות התורה, שהיא פנימית רצונו יתברך בחוכמתו, ואין שם הסתר פנים כלל. Since the 10 commandments comprise the entire Torah, which represents the inner aspect of his will and wisdom, where there is no concealment of the countenance whatsoever. כמו שנאמר, כי באור פניך נתת לנו תורת חיים. As we say in our prayers, for in the light of your countenance, you gave us a Torah of life. You want me to read this now?
You can.
The Torah thus represents the light of his countenance, i.e., the inner light of godliness. When this light was revealed through the uttering of the 10 commandments, the entire world experienced a revelation of godliness, as we can see. ולכן היו בטלים במציאות ממש, כמאמר רבותינו זיכרונם לברכה, שעל כל דיבור פרחה נשמתם. Therefore, they, the people, the Jews that stood at Sinai, were nullified out of existence, as our sages have said. At every divine utterance, their soul took flight. אלא שהחזירה הקדוש ברוך הוא להן בטל שעתיד להחיות בו את המתים. But God restored it to them. Betal, I knew there was something weird about that. Betal שעתיד להחיות בו את המתים. So, but God restored it to them with the dew with which he will revive the dead in the world to come. והוא טל תורה שנקרא עוז. This is the dew of the Torah, which is called might. So yeah, this is interesting. I just recently heard about the tal, that it's the tal that brings back the dead specifically. So that's interesting. I've never known that. I didn't know.
So if you study Petichat Eliyahu, which is a section of the Tikkunei Zohar, which many people recite at various points, especially Sephardim prayers, right? So there's a special inyan of Tal, of 39.
Yeah.
Right? Tal is Gematria 39. And so we see in a lot of places, right? So a mikvah is made out of 40, right? And this idea of 39 and 40 is actually something that shows up in a lot of Jewish symbolism
Is it
and
Shabbat? 39
thir-
melachot, or is it the one?
that 39 malachot. Yeah, exactly. So on Shabbat, it shows up all over the place.
Yeah.
This concept of 39 and 40, and so Tal specifically is something that brings you to completion.
אוקיי. כמאמר רבותינו זיכרונם לברכה, כל העוסק בתורה, טל תורה מחיו, כולי,
Mechayehu.
מחייהו. Similarly, our sages remark, whoever engages in the study of the Torah, the dew of Torah will revive him. By the way, you can be a really good second grade teacher at like a Hebrew school.
Well, yeah, because I can help the people read. Yeah. It's funny. Like I tell people, okay, yeah, you're gonna learn, if you're gonna learn to read Hebrew, you're gonna learn the nekudot, and then once you're good at it, you're gonna forget the nekudot.
Yeah.
And they're like, so why should I learn it? I'm like, guess what? I'm sorry, but like you kind of have to learn it in order to learn it. But then once you get good at it, you're completely gonna forget.
Yeah. אוקיי. רק שאחר כך גרם החטא ונתגשמו הם והעולם עד את קץ הימין. But afterward, after the Torah was given, their sin caused both them and the world to become gross again until the end of days. So this is like the descent that we spoke about. So until the end of days, when God's right hand, Yamin, meaning both days and right, his power will be revealed. So why Yamin? Because didn't we say at the beginning? Didn't we say that Yamin was the mercy, was and like small was the justice, and that was the lechatchila. So wouldn't it be the lechatchila?
Yeah. So there. So Ketz Yamin, and there's a reason why it's Ketz Yamin, because it comes from like Daniel and places where the Bible is in Aramaic, not Hebrew, right?
Yeah.
And so there's
right.
Yeah. So there is. Ultimately, the lechatchila is Elokut, but Shem Havaya which is Rachamim, is actually above. This is actually I think. It's been a long time since I even skimmed through Lonely Man of Faith, but what the Rav
on your channel?
What?
There's a whole series about it.
I know, and I didn't watch any of it. But if correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm guessing that he talks about how you would think that Adam Kadmon is in fact that which is. It is in fact that which is ideal, but ultimately the world was created for Adam Rishon, not Adam Kadmon.
Right. Yeah. Adam Rishon is the more, the way he says, like more justice, more conquering, more creation in this world. Yeah.
It is the same idea as what we're talking here, right? Is Ratzak Kadosh Baruch Hu Dira B'Tachtonim, right? You would think that which is the highest and most spiritual is that which is closest to God's desire, but that's actually not the case. This is how Judaism is anti-Gnostic, right? The Gnostic idea is, let us escape from this world of Gashmiut, of this world of materiality, into the perfection of the ideal. And Judaism says no. The whole point of the spiritual and the ideal is, in fact, for it to be incarnated, for it to be embodied into the world. And that's what God wanted in creating the spiritual world.
We have to grapple with the reality that the ideal is not here, but we're striving and making progress towards it. But
Fraud says the ideal is perfected in action. And really, I mean, it's the world of Asiyah, right?
Mhm.
It is sof ma'aseh b'machshava techila.
Yeah.
Right?
Mhm.
It is in fact the final action, which is what God was in God's plan to begin with.
Mhm. Yeah. Okay. שאז יזדכך גשמיות הגוף והעולם, ויוכלו לקבל גילוי אור השם, שיאיר לישראל על ידי התורה שנקראת עוז. Then the dross of the body, and of the world will be refined, and they will be able to receive the revelation of God's light that will shine forth over Israel by means of the Torah, which is called might. ומיתרון ההארה לישראל יגיע חושך האומות גם כן. Through the superabundance of light which will shine upon the Jewish people, the darkness of the nation will also be lit up. Yagia is like like it comes. It should be with ayin, but yagia is like it's hard, like it's struggle.
No, so this is from
No?
Negia. This is Yagia will come to the Choshe. This is from to touch Noga.
Negia. Okay. Well.
Yeah. Well. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But okay. So through the superabundance of light which will shine upon the Jewish people, the darkness of the nation will also be lit up. כדכתיב, והלכו גויים לאורך וכולי, as it is written, and nations will walk by the Jewish people's light. וככתיב, בית יעקב לכו ונלכה באור השם. And it is also written that the nations will say to the Jewish people, house of Jacob, go and we will walk along by the light of God. וכתיב, ונגלה כבוד השם וראו כל בשר יחדיו. And again, and again it says, and the glory of God shall be revealed, and all flesh will see. וכתיב, לבוא בנקרת עצורים ובסעיפי הסלעים מפני פחד השם והדר גאונו וכולי. And it says, to enter the holes of the rocks and the clefts of the boulders for fear of God and of his majestic glory.
Yeah, this is all in Isaiah.
וכמו שאומרים, והופע בהדר גאון עוזך על כל יושבי תבל ארצך. So also do we pray, appear in the majestic splendor of your might over all the inhabitants of the worlds, including all nations.
There's a lot of sound here.
Yeah. Do you want to do it, and you want me to go through the other chapter, or what do you want to do?
No, I can do it. This shouldn't be taking too long. Okay. Hopefully you guys can hear me. והנה תכלית השלמות הזה של ימות המשיח ותחיית המתים שהוא גילוי אור אינסוף ברוך הוא בעולם הזה הגשמי. So this ultimate perfection of the days of Mashiach and the resurrection of the dead is the revelation of godliness in the material world. תלוי במעשינו ועבודתנו כל זמן משך הגלות. It all depends on us doing what we are supposed to do during the time of the exile. כי הגורם שכר המצווה היא המצווה בעצמה. So that which causes the mitzvah, right, is the mitzvah itself. This is well, the Rebbe notes, unlike, for example, the wages paid by the owner of a field to the laborer who plow and plants in it, where the labor does not create the money he is paid, a mitzvah actually creates its own reward.
Right.
כי בעשייתה ממשיך האדם גילוי אור אין סוף ברוך הוא מלמעלה למטה. Through doing the mitzvah, you're bringing godliness into the world. להתלבש בגשמיות עולם הזה, בדבר שהיה תחילה תחת ממשלת קליפת נוגה ומקבל חיותה ממנה. Right? You're taking something that owes its existence to the shining husk and receives its vitality from klipa, and you're bringing godliness into the world. Shehem kol devarim hatahorim umutarim shenaset bahem hamitzvah ma'asit, which is all of those physical things through which we do mitzvot. Kagon klaf hatefillin umezuzah v'sefer Torah, like the leather that is used for tefillin or mezuzot or a Torah scroll. Ukamamar Rabbeinu Zichronam Livracha lo huchshar melechet shamayim ela tahorim umutarim beficha. As our sages state, for the work of heaven, mitzvah objects, only that which is pure and permissible to eat may be used, right? So you can only use leather from a kosher animal. וכן אתרוג שאינו עורלה ומעות הצדקה שאינן גזל וכיוצא בהם. And similarly, you can't use an etrog that is forbidden fruit of the first three harvests, or you can't give charity by stealing it or anything like that. שהעורלה היא משלוש פרקות הטמאות לגמרי, שאין להם עלייה לעולם, כמו שכתוב בעץ חיים. Because it explains through the writings of Rabbi Chaim Vital that what is the reason we don't eat the fruit of the first 3 years of a tree, because those correspond to the 3 impure husks. But the shining husk, which has a capacity to be redeemed, that is what we take and we make into things of mitzvah. וכן כל מצווה הבאה בעבירה חס ושלום. Similarly, any mitzvah that comes through doing a sin, it doesn't count as a mitzvah. ועכשיו שמקיים בהם מצוות השם ורצונו. Now that one fulfills God's commandments and will with these objects, הרי החיות שבהן עולה ומתבטל ונכלל באור אין סוף ברוך הוא, שהוא רצונו יתברך המלובש בהן. When you take an object like a etrog that is not orla, right? Mm-hmm. Then you're taking this thing, which it comes ultimately from the husks, even though it is the shining husk, and you are revealing the godliness within it, helping it to shine. מאחר שאין שם בחינת הסתר פנים כלל להסתיר אורו יתברך, because once it becomes something, a devar mitzvah, it's no longer hiding, but rather revealing godliness. וכן כוח נפש החיונית, הבהמית, שבאברי גוף האדם המקיים המצווה, הוא מתלבש גם כן בעשייה זו. Similarly, the vitalizing animal soul, right, that is within a man, that when he does a mitzvah, it is likewise clothes itself in the deed of the mitzvah. ועולה מהקליפה ונכלל בקדושת המצווה שהיא רצונו יתברך ובטל באור אין סוף ברוך הוא.
So, and I think we spoke about this last time, but just to make sure that I understand that I'm tracking, is like the speaking and thought is the garments of the garments that are at least closer,
more spiritual.
Yeah. So that's how you can be connected to the spiritual side, but then only through deed, which is connected to the nefesh be'amit, to the vitalizing soul, to the body, to the animal soul. Can you connect all of them together and again be in this flow?
Yeah, it is the most. Yeah. So ultimately, that's so. Like we say, lo hadrisha ela hamaseh, right? It's not speaking or thinking, but rather what you actually do, which is the ikar.
Yeah.
וגם במצוות תלמוד תורה וקריאת שמע ותפילה כיוצא בהן. Similarly, when you do things that are from more holy things like study of Torah, reciting Shema, prayer, and אף שאינן בעשייה גשמית ממש, even though they're not actions, שתחת ממשלת קליפת נוגה, that are under the rulership of this klipat noga, shining husk. Mikol makom ha kaimalan dehirhur lav kedibur dame, ve'eno yotze yedei chobato ad sheyotze bisfatav. We have this rule that just thinking about something is not the same as actually bringing it into reality through speaking it. V'kaim alan the akimat sefatav have maaseh. Right? At the very least, you cause your lips to move in doing these things, and so you have an action in Talmud Torah and Tefillah. כי אי אפשר לנפש האלוקית לפתח בשפתיים ופה ולשון בשיניים הגשמיים, כי אם על ידי נפש החיונית הבהמית המלובשת באברי הגוף ממש, right? Because it's not possible to actually for the godly soul to express these things through your physical body without the involvement of your physical soul, your animal soul, and your body. וכל מה שמדבר בכוח גדול יותר, הוא מכניס ומלביש יותר כוחות מנפש החיונית בדיבורים אלו. So the more forcefully you speak, the more you're bringing these things into physicality, into actual action. וזהו שאמר הכתוב כל עצמותיי תאמרנה. And that's, we say in the prayers, all of my bones shall declare. וזהו שאמרו רבותינו זיכרונם לברכה, Im arucha b'chol ramach avarim mishtameret ve'im lav eina mishtameret. And similarly, our sages said in Eruvin, if the Torah abides in all 248 limbs, it is preserved. Otherwise, it is not preserved. Right? You have to actually bring it into physical reality. Ki hashikha hi miklipat haguf v'nefesh hachiyonit habahamit shehen miklipat noga hanichlalet lifamim bekedusha. Because all matters of forgetfulness ultimately stem from the klipa, from the husks, but the klipat noga, the shining husk, can at times be included in holiness. V'hainu matish kochan umachnis kol kochan b'kedushat haTorah or hatefillah. When he basically he works the klipat noga, he weakens it and he allows it to be included in holiness. Zot ve'od acheret, and one other thing, shekoach nefesh hachiyonit hamitlabeshet be'otiot hadibur betalmud Torah or tefillah ko yetze bahen, or mitzvot ma'asiot, the vitalizing soul's energy clothed in the letters of one's speech in Torah, study, prayer, and or the like, or mitzvot involving action. Hare kol gidulo v'chayuto mahadam shehu miklipat noga mamash. Right? So even if you are talking about things that are truly just in your mind, in your thoughts and your speech, still these are things which are outgrowths of the vitalizing force in your blood, right? Ultimately, your consciousness arises from your body, which comes from the shining husk. Shehen kol ochalin umashkin masha'achal v'shatav v'nasedam, nasudam, right? Because you eat and you drink and you take everything that from the world, and it becomes blood and it vitalizes you. Shahayu tachat mamshalta v'yanku chayutan mimena. Right? That ultimately it came from the material. Va'ata. And now, he mithapechet meralatov and v'nichlelet b'kedusha. It's taken from being something at the very least not part of goodness, and it's included in something holy. Al yedei koach nefesh hachiyonit hagadel mimena שנתלבש באותיות אלו או בעשייה זו, אשר הן פנימיות רצונו יתברך בלי שום הסתר פנים. Right? When you actually do an action of godliness, or you think or holy thoughts, or you pray to God, right? You're taking that which was not godliness, you're including it in godliness, that which God wants, and in doing so, you're revealing God completely, because it is what God wants that at this moment you do that which you are doing, right? So that is a complete revelation of godliness, because it is God's will in this world.
Yeah, and there's something about I remember there was this point about there's something specific about the letters, like of saying those specific letters also, that were, I guess, because those were, I mean, I guess there's like some more about how all the letters are a reflection or expression of the creation.
Oh, right. Okay. So anytime, right. So this is earlier in Tanya, where he talks about Behibaram, when God created the world, right? He created it with speech, right? And so when God, so ultimately anything that exists is extension and revelation of godliness, because what does it mean for God to speak, right? It says, "Vayomer Hashem tehi or," and God said that there should be light, right?
Yeah.
What does that mean? God said there will be light. Like, God doesn't have a mouth, and where did He say it? This was before the creation of the world, right? It explains to us an expression of a revelation of godliness. So, yes, words and really anything that exists as an extension of God's words is a revelation of godliness.
Yeah. Okay.
וחיותן נכלל גם כן באור אין סוף ברוך הוא שהוא רצונו יתברך, ובחיותן נכלל ועולה גם כן כוח נפש החיונית. Right? So this vitality is then included in God's will, and that includes all that comes from the animal soul. ועל ידי זה תעלה גם כן כללות קליפת נוגה, שהיא כללות החיות של עולם הזה, הגשמי והחומרי. And through that little action, you are in fact redeeming the entirety of the shining husk, despite the fact that only a bit of it is in fact being included in holiness, because that is the most important part of it. And you're basically you're bringing the entirety of the corporal world into holiness through this act. כאשר כל הנשמה ונפש האלוקית שבכל ישראל חלקת בפרטים ל-60 ריבו, תקיים כל נפש פרטים, כל תרי"ג מצוות התורה, right? So you have this idea of the neshama, the soul of Israel, which has 600,000 offshoots, and in 613 mitzvot of the Torah, shasa lo ta'aseh lahafrid, shasa gidim shel dam nefesh achionit shebaguf. Right, so we talk about the 613 mitzvot. There's the 365 negative commandments and 248 negative commandments. Each of them corresponding to various parts of the body, right? שלא ינקו ויקבלו חיות בעבירה זו מאחת משלוש קליפות הטמאות לגמרי, שמהם נשפעים שסה לא תעשה דאורייתא וענפיהן שהן מדרבנן, right? So the 365 gidim, right? The exactly, what the thing is, but like, so 365 prohibitions, that there shouldn't be the klipa, the evil coming into what you are doing. And I think he's going to talk about a ramach again, and then the positive ones, so that you do bring the light of God. V'shuv lo tuchal nefesh achionit la'alot el Hashem im nitma betumat hashalosh klipot hatemeot. Right? If you do go against God's will in these prohibitions, right? There's not a possibility of this being elevated, although there is teshuvah mi'ahava. He might talk about that later, but generally, she'ein lahem aliyah la'olam ki im bitul v'havara lagamr. That these things cannot be elevated, rather they have to be destroyed completely. Kamosh katuv et ruach hatum'ah avir min haaretz. Like it says, I believe in Isaiah, Zechariah, I will remove the spirit of uncleanliness from the world. V'ramach mitzvot aseh, right? And the 248 positive mitzvot, lamshich or ein sof baruch hu lamata, which bring down godliness into this world. לעלות לא לקשר לחיית בו כללות הנפש החיונית שברמ"ח איברי הגוף, בייחוד גמור להיות לאחדם ממש, right? But when you do one of the commandments, right, you are in fact bringing God's light into the world and unifying it with yourself completely so that they are completely one. כמו שעלה ברצונו יתברך להיות לא דירה בתחתונים, והם לא למרכבה כמו האבות, right? Because God wanted to have a dwelling place in the lower realms. What does that mean? Just as the patriarchs were a chariot in which godliness was able to ride, as it were, into the world, similarly, when you make yourself do that which God wants, you are in fact becoming like a chariot through which God is revealed in the lower world. ומאחר שכללות נפש החיונית שבכללות ישראל תהיה מרכבה קדושה להשם. And once that becomes completely true, that all of Israel does that which God wants, אזי גם כללות החיות של עולם הזה שהיא קליפת נוגה עכשיו תצא אז מטומאתה וחלאתה ותעלה לקדושה. At that point, all of the shining husk will be able to emerge out of its impurity and sickness to be part of holiness. להיות מרכבה להשם בהתגלות כבודו, to be a chariot for God in his revelation of his glory. וראו כל בשר יחדיו. All flesh will behold godliness together. ויופיע עליהם בהדר גאון עוזו וימלא כבוד השם את כל הארץ. We said this verse as well before, right? God will be revealed. בישראל יראו עין בעין כבמתן תורה, and we will be able to see eye to eye, like in the giving of the Torah, דכתיב, אתה הוראת לדעת, כי השם הוא אלוקים, אין עוד מלבדו, right? Like we just explained in the previous chapter, ועל ידי זה יתבלעו ויתבטלו לגמרי כל השלוש קליפות טמאות, the three unclean husks will be completely obliterated, כי יניקתן וחיותן מהקדושה עכשיו, right? Because they have a capacity to exist now from the holiness, כי על ידי קליפת נוגה הממוצעת ביניהם, right? That this capacity for them to exist comes from the fact that there is some holiness in the shining husk, which is an intermediary between them. ונמצא כי כל התכלית של ימות המשיח ותחיית המתים, שהיא גילוי כבודו ואלוקותו יתברך, ולהעביר רוח הטומאה מן הארץ, we see through this that it is actually doing the mitzvot and bringing the klipat noga out of its evil self into the light, that makes it possible to have a complete revelation of godliness through the removal of ruach hatumah, right? The spirit of impurity. תלוי בהמשכת אלוקותו באור אין סוף ברוך הוא לנפש החיונית שבכללות ישראל בכל רמ"ח איבריה על ידי קיומה כל רמ"ח מצוות עשה, right? So all of this depends on Israel doing the 248 mitzvot, ולהעביר רוח הטומאה ממנה בשמירתה כל שסה מצוות לא תעשה, שלא יונקו ממנו שסה גידיה, and through not doing that which is prohibited, um, which brings life into the three impure husks. כי כללות ישראל שהן 60 ריבו נשמות פרטיות הן כללות החיות של כללות העולם כי בשבילם נברא. Right? Because ultimately, just as the body exists because it has a soul, in a very similar manner, Israel constitutes the soul of the world. Right? וכל פרט מהם הוא כולל ושייך לו החיות של חלק אחד מ-60 ריבו מכללות העולם. And each Jew is in fact related to one part of that 600,000, התלוי בנפשו החיונית להעלותו להשם בעלייתה. And this part of the world depends on his vital soul for its elevation to God through the vital soul's own elevation. דהיינו, במה שמשתמש מעולם הזה לצורך גופו ונפשו החיונית לעבודת השם, כגון אכילה ושתייה ודומיהן, ודירה וכל כלי תשמישיו, right? So you live in this world and you're using the world, and at some point you will put on tefillin, right? And all of everything that made it possible for you to put on tefillin, right, which is a revelation of godliness in the world, is elevated into godliness through its connection with you. Right?
Because the vessel, the merkava again. Yeah.
Right? So there's some farm somewhere where somebody makes hay, which fed some cow, which got slaughtered, and its skin was turned into leather, which became a part of your tefillin, right? And you put on tefillin, and that whole process gets redeemed by the fact that you putting on tefillin is God's will.
Yeah.
Got it?
Mm-hmm.
אלא ש60 ריבו נשמות פרטיות, אלו הן שורשים. וכל שורש מתחלק ל60 ריבו ניצוצות, שכל ניצוץ הוא נשמה אחת. So when we talk about the 600,000 particular souls, right, this is a root. Each root subdivides into 600,000 sparks, right? So, and each of those sparks is a neshama. וכן בנפש רוח ורוח בכל עולם מארבע עולמות אצילות בריאה יצירה עשייה, right? So just as we talk about neshama, similarly by nefesh and ruach, and we talk about each of the worlds, right? And Atzilut, Bria, Yetzirah, Asiyah. The whole nitzot lo yarad la'olam hazeh, af shehi yerida gedola ubechinat galut mamash. The purpose why each of these sparks of holiness came into the world, even though this is a great descent from where they were before. כי גם שיהיה צדיק גמור עובד השם ביראה ואהבה רבה בתענוגים. For even if, right, somebody is completely holy at all times, לא יגיע למעלות דבקות בהשם בתחילו רחימו בטרם ירידתו לעולם הזה החומרי, לא מיני ולא מקצתה, right? Even if somebody is completely holy and such a great person, he's still never going to reach that point of where his soul was when it was within God Himself. ואין ערך ודמיון ביניהם כלל, כנודע לכל משכיל, שהגוף אינו יכול לסבול חולו, right? And anyone who knows these things understands that there is no comparison and similarity between that which your soul was capable of when it was included within godliness completely to when it came down into this world. אלא ירדתו לעולם הזה להתלבש בגוף ונפש החיונית הוא כדי לתקנם בלבד.
I need a minute break.
Okay,
I'll be
you
back.
take a minute break. Symbiotic seems more symbiotic, but I'm not sure the word. I'm not sure what you mean, Sandy. But so what he's talking about is there is a tikkun, there is a rectification and a perfection which takes place when a person's soul comes into this world, so that when it returns, it will be more perfect. It is a yerida letzorech aliyah. It is a descent for the purpose of an ascent.
Weiter.
Weiter? Okay. Where were we? Okay. בלבד. ולהפריד מהרע של שלוש קליפות הטמאות על ידי שמירת שסה לא תעשה בענפיה. Right? So the souls come into this world so that they can have a sort of perfection, a sort of tikkun, a sort of rectification through sur mera, from staying away from evil, ולעלות נפשו החיונית עם החלקה השייך לה מכללות עולם הזה, right? To elevate that part of its physical self from this world, ולקשרם לחדם באור אין סוף ברוך הוא, אשר ימשיך בהם על ידי קיומו כל רמ"ח מצוות עשה בנפשו החיונית, right? And by bringing godliness into this world through making their physical body do that which is God's will. Shehi hamekayemet kol mitzvot ma'asiyot kenizkar la'el, because that is what is actually doing the physical actions. Ukamosh katuv be'etz chayim sha'ar chaflev. The soul itself is pure. It's not actually having a rectification. It is creating a rectification in the physical body, which in a sense allows the godly soul to do something that it was not able to do without.
So it is. Is that to say that it is the way in which the body can be rectified?
Okay. Elokai neshama shenatata bi. God, the soul you gave me is pure.
Right.
Right. So the soul itself does not need a tikkun.
Mm-hmm.
It comes into the world for the purpose of the tikkun of the nefesh bahamit,
Mm-hmm.
right? But there is a sense in which that itself is a tikkun. Why? Because this is a chesed, this is a necessity that your godly soul has to do kindness, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it has a tikkun, not that it needs it for itself, but in that it does a kindness to that which needs it.
Right. So let's just say that it can
In one sense,
materialize
it
the
doesn't have a
kindness. Yeah.
tikkun. In another sense, it does.
Right. Because it materializes. It not only does a tikkun for the body, the body also helps it materialize its own pure kindness.
Right. So this is, I mean, ultimately, when you get into the question of, right. So, who does the kindness? The person who gives money to the poor person, or the poor person who takes the money
Right.
from the rich person,
Mm-hmm.
right? In a very real sense, we would say it's not the rich person who needs the poor person, right? Obviously, the rich person would be fine without a poor person, except that he would not have the capacity to do a kindness. And
Mm-hmm.
without the capacity to do a kindness, what are you? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
ולא הוצרכה להתלבש בעולם הזה וכולו, רק להמשיך אור לתקנם, right? It has no need to be embodied except to draw down light to perfect them. והוא ממש דוגמת סוד גלות השכינה לברר ניצוצות. And this is an exact parallel to what we talk about God's Shekhinah be coming into the exile with us, right? God doesn't need to be in exile, but God comes into exile for our sake, right? ובזה יובן מה שהפליגו רבותינו זכרנו לברכה במאוד מאוד במעלת הצדקה ואמרו ששקולה כנגד כל המצוות, right? And this well, hifligu means they disagreed, but here they're translating it as extolled.
So, yeah.
I guess haflaga, right? Yeah, they sent out. I guess. Okay.
Yeah.
The greatness of tzedakah, that it's like all of the mitzvot together, that is as great as all of them together. Talmud Yerushalmi hi nikret b'shem mitzvah stam, and the Jerusalem Talmud, when it talks about tzedakah, it just calls it mitzvah. כי כך היה הרגל הלשון לקרוא צדקה בשם מצווה סתם, right? Because they would just call it mitzvah, right? And the fact is, in a very real sense, we still do that. We say, do a mitzvah, right? Do a kindness. מפני שהיא עיקר המצוות מעשיות ועולה על כולנה, right? Because that it is the basic core of all mitzvot and surpasses all of them. שכולן הן רק להעלות נפש החיונית להשם, שהיא המקיימת אותם ומתלבשת בהם, right? Because the mitzvot exist in order to do a kindness to the physical soul, right? To allow it to come up to godliness. להיכלל באור אין סוף ברוך הוא המלובש בהם, right? To be included in the holy light that is enclosed in the mitzvot. ואין לך מצווה שנפש החיונית מתלבשת בה כל כך כמצוות הצדקה. and it is in fact tzedakah, charity, which best exemplifies this. שבכל המצוות אין מתלבש בהן רק כוח אחד מנפש החיונית בשעת מעשה המצווה לבד. Right? With any other mitzvah, when you're doing it, okay, then you're doing that one thing. אבל בצדקה, שאדם נותן מיגיע כפיו. When a person gives tzedakah, right, he is giving from that which he had worked in, right? הרי כל כוח נפשו והחיונית מלובש בעשיית מלאכתו, או עסק אחר שנסתכר בו מעות אלו. The money comes from the fact that he was engaged in this labor, right? וכשנותן לצדקה הרי כל נפשו החיונית עולה להשם, right?
So I have a question here.
Yeah.
Technical question, but
Yeah.
when it says tzedakah here, does it only refer to giving money to charity, or would it also refer to
doing a kindness,
like delivering food bags to people, food to people, or things like that?
Obviously, those are included in the idea of tzedakah, but there's something about the capacity of money, right? The liquidity of money, which in one sense attaches everything from you yourself into it, right? Because when you earn money, right, it's in fact abstracting you in a sense. And when you give money, you are in a sense giving an abstract kindness. Because with money, right, you are empowering that person to do whatever they need to do.
Right.
It's fungible. And so there is a symbolism in giving money itself, right? And that's why Shabbat Shekalim, there are things where no, you actually have to give a coin, right? וגם מי שאינו נהנה מהגיעו, מכל מקום פועל, ובמעות אלו היה יכול לקנות חיי נפשו החיונית, הרי נותן חיי נפשו להשם, right? And even somebody who, let's say, he doesn't physically involve himself in whatever work he's doing, right? Since the fact is that money is something he could use for anything in his own life, and he's transferring it as a mitzvah, he's taking a bit of the entirety of his life and he's including it in that mitzvah.
Yes.
ולכן אמרו רבותינו לזכרם לברכה שמקרבת את הגאולה. That charity brings, hastens the redemption. לפי שבצדקה אחת מעלה הרבה מנפש החיונית. Right? That giving a little bit, he is bringing along a lot of his physical self. מה שלא היה יכול לעלות ממנה כל כך כוחות ובחינות בכמה מצוות מעשיות אחרות, right? Which doesn't apply in many other ways. ומה שאמרו רבותינו זרחונם לברכה, שתלמוד תורה כנגד כולם, right? So we have this about several different things. So he's saying, okay, we say it, but Talmud Torah, right? Why Talmud Torah? היינו מפני שתלמוד תורה היא בדיבור ומחשבה שהם לבושים הפנימיים של נפש החיונית, right? Talmud Torah, it involves those more spiritual aspects. וגם מהותן ועצמותן של בחינות חוכמה, בינה ודעת, מקליפת נוגה שבנפש החיונית, נכללות בקדושה ממש כשעוסקת בתורה בעיון ושכל, right? And he's including Chabad, the Chokhmah Binah Da'at of the Klipat Noga in when he's studying the Torah. ואף שמהותן ועצמותן של המידות חסד גבורת תפארת כולו לא יכלו להם הבינונים להפכם לקדושה. So now he's talking about the fact that a Beinoni is not able to completely conquer the land, as it were, when we talk about the Nefesh HaBahamit. היינו משום שהרע חזק יותר במידות מבחוכמה בינה דעת, מפני יניקתן שם מהקדושה יותר, כידוע ליודעכם. Right? And the students of Kabbalah apparently know why it is that Chabad, the three intellectual aspects, are more pure than the seven lower ones. And this note says it's because of the shattering of the vessels, because in the shattering, the intellectual vessels did not break, but the emotions did.
So wouldn't, so he's saying that the Chabad has that the Sitra Achra has more grasp over the intellectual midot than the emotional.
No.
Saying the opposite.
Right. No. So he's saying with Talmud Torah, you're able to engage that which is more holy and pure, right? So in one aspect, that's greater than any other mitzvah.
Mm-hmm.
But when we talk about tzedakah, that's actually coming from a lower aspect, and in that sense, that's more important. So he's explaining, depending on how you look at it, right? Talmud Torah it's because of the holiness of it and the purity of it, whereas lahafech by tzedakah, it's because it's involved in that which is most physical and least holy.
Right. So that's kind of like what we spoke about last time in terms of like you can wear tefillin or you can donate to a charity of your choosing.
Okay.
And somehow both of those are supposed. Somehow both of those are supposed to help the situation, the entire situation. Like the Talmud Torah is
so.
Right.
One of my favorite stories about the Rebbe was told to me by Rabbi Hecht from Brentwood, not far from here. And funny enough, when I was visiting in Pennsylvania, I met his father-in-law. And so I told him this story. It's one of my favorite stories. So when Rabbi Hecht was a little kid, he used to go during Sefirat HaOmer, he used to go to visit the Rebbe every year with his family. And so Rosh Chodesh Iyar is right around, I forget the exact order, but so it's during Sefirat HaOmer, and Rosh Chodesh is right around Tiferet Shebi Tiferet. Because when we do Sphira, right, it's the 7 times 7. So there's an aspect of each of the 7 in each of the 7, right? Yeah. So Tiferet Shebi Tiferet comes out to be the 3rd day of the 3rd week, right? So it's the 24th day, I guess. I forgot. Anyway, it's right around Rosh Chodesh Iyar. And it's and one year he was there, and they fell in a certain order. I forget what exactly it was. It was Tiferet Shebi Tiferet, and then it was Rosh Chodesh, and then it was Shabbat, right? And the Rebbe gave this whole beautiful speech about how like the fact that Shabbat was coming afterwards was so perfect and great, right? That Mashiach must come this year because this order and gave a beautiful speech about the order.
Yeah.
So he was so excited and he's like, oh, Mashiach must be coming this year, right? And then next year he's there and Shabbat fell in the opposite order. And the Rebbe gave a speech about how great it is that it's first Shabbat and then it's, right? And he's like, hold on, what's going on here? Last year, it felt like this, and the Rebbe's talking about how great it is. And this year, it felt this way, and the Rebbe's talking about how great it is, right? What's he trying to pull here?
Mm-hmm.
And he told me that got resolved for him when he heard a story about an old woman who was standing a long time for dollars. So the Rebbe used to, it started with dimes. Whenever little kids would visit him, he would give them a dime to give to charity. And eventually it became dollars, and eventually lots of people, adults would come, right? And the Rebbe would stand from morning till night handing out dollars to people, and there's videos of it, like people would come by. And this old woman came and she said to the Rebbe, I don't understand how you do this. I'm an old woman. She wasn't as old as the Rebbe was. And just standing here waiting to go buy for dollars is exhausting.
Yeah.
How do you stand here giving it out all day and talking to people? And the Rebbe told her.
And I think that I've heard that he did this after his heart attack.
His stroke, yeah, I think after he did somewhat, yeah. Unfortunately, yeah.
Well, no, he had a heart. So isn't this like the Kislev, like the beginning? Because that's what we were talking about. He had a heart attack first, and then he lived
He had a heart attack, and then he had a stroke, and then he passed away. Yeah. Okay. When the Rebbe died, he was 92.
Yeah.
Right.
So he had a heart attack when he was 75, 76, from what I understand.
The heart attack was, yeah. I don't know exactly. I'm not the best at these dates.
Anyway, sorry, I disturbed your so
okay.
Standing with the dollars with the old lady.
Right. So the Rebbe told her, a rich man doesn't get tired polishing diamonds.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And Rabbi Hecht told me that's he understood what the Rebbe was doing was, and we say by spira, right? So the word sapir in Aramaic means to shine, right? And we say by Sfirat HaHomer, you're supposed to try to make each day shine. And that's what that's what the essential job of the Rebbe is, right? What did the Rebbe do to each chassid? He tried to make him shine, tried to show how that individual person was great.
Yeah.
And so he was doing the same thing by each day. This year, Shabbat came before Rosh Chodesh Iyar. And so the Rebbe talks about how great it is and how this is the perfectness of it, right? And next year, Shabbat comes after Rosh Chodesh Iyar. And he talks about how great that is.
Mm-hmm.
And each person who comes by, he's shining diamonds, right? Yeah. So similarly, when the Alter Rebbe, he talks about, in this way, tzedakah is the greatest mitzvah, right? And you're going to say, but Talmud Torah is the greatest mitzvah,
yeah.
right? How can you have keneged kulam, tzedakah keneged kulam, and Talmud Torah keneged kulam? Right? They're shining diamonds. That's what they're doing. They're making it. Okay. So hopefully that helps a little.
Yeah.
Okay. זאת ועוד אחרת, והיא העולה על כולנה במעלת עסק התלמוד התורה על כל המצוות, על פי מה שנזכר לעיל בשם התיקונים, דרמ"ח פיגודין, הן רמ"ח איברים במלכה, right? It can also be understood that it's the greatness of Talmud Torah because you have this equivalence in the Tikkunei Zohar regarding the 248 positive mitzvot and the limbs of God at Kaviyachol. וכמו באדם התחתון דרך משל, אין ערך ודמיון כלל בין החיות שברמ"ח איבריו לגבי החיות שבמוחן, שהוא השכל המתחלק לשלוש בחינות חוכמה בינה דעת. Just as, for example, in the case of a human being, the vitality in his 248 organs bears no comparison or similarity to the vitality in his brain. Every limb of the body is, of course, bound to the soul, which provides it with life. Yet there are two separate entities which have been joined together. It is otherwise, however, in the relationship between one's intellect and his soul. The intellect is an extension and part of the soul itself. Thus, its unity with the soul is not that of two separate entities, which have been joined, but of two components of a whole. This difference between the limbs and the intellect illustrates the difference between the other mitzvot and Talmud Torah, as the Alter Rebbe continues. Okay. ככה ממש דרך משל להבדיל ברבות הבדלות לאין קץ, as a way of analogy, but to understand that there is a very important distinction. בהארת אור אין סוף ברוך הוא המתלבשות במצוות מעשיות, לגבי הארת אור אין סוף שבבחינת חוכמה בינה ודעת, שבחוכמת התורה איש איש כפי שכלו והשגתו. So there is a similar aspect in which the studying of Torah can be understood in a similar manner as the difference between us thinking about something and actually doing it. Because when we do it in actuality, where it's a combination of the material and the spiritual, whereas when we think about it, it is purely spiritual, right? In a similar manner, study of Torah, as opposed to doing the mitzvot, has a particular connection with God's holy light.
Well, and I think what he's trying to say here is also that it's unlike the deeds where there is something flat about them, of like you do it. Yeah, there is something very precise about them, and everybody does them as they are commanded. The study has a greater potential for, like, it's more attuned to the person and their own intellect and how they can do it. So some people might be able to do it little by little, like a chapter in the morning and a chapter at night, but some people can study all day, and because it's more, I think that's what he was trying to know, because it's more, they're individualized for them, they unite in a better way with God.
It's more fluid to the individual.
It's more fluid to the individual, hence it can be more I don't know. Hence,
yeah.
Okay.
ואף שאינו משיג אלא בגשמיות, although one grasps Torah only as it is enclosed in the physical terms, right? Because when we're talking about particular halachot, Arei HaTorah nimshal lamayim. Yeah, actually, that's funny. We talked about fluid, right? The Torah is likened to water. Sheyordim makom gavoa, kamo shenitbar la'ayil, as will be explained further. Va'af al pi chen amru rabbeinu zechronam l'racha lo hamidrash ikar ela hamase. Yet still, the rabbis say it is not the midrash which is important, but actual deeds. That hayom la'asotan kativ, like it says, this day to do them. Umevatlin talmud Torah lekiyum mitzvat ma'asit she'i yashar la'asota al yedei acherim. And the halacha is that you interrupt your Torah study to do any mitzvah that it's not possible to let someone else do. Mishum ki zeh kol ha'adam l'tachlit briato v'yirato la'olam hazeh. Because that is the whole purpose of a person. Lihyot lo yitbarach dira b'tachtonim davka la'ahacha chashacha l'nahara v'yamale kovod Hashem et kol ha'aretz hagashmit daika v'ra'u kol basar yachdav kanizkar la'ayil. Like we discussed earlier, it's all because we want godliness to be revealed in this lowest world, and through turning the darkness into light. מה שאין כן כשאפשר לעשותה על ידי אחרים, אין מבטלין תלמוד תורה. But when somebody else can do the mitzvah, we do not interrupt the study of Torah. אף שכל התורה אינה אלא פירוש המצוות המעשיות, even though the whole purpose of the Torah is to explain how to do the physical mitzvot, והיינו משום שהיא בחינת חוכמה בינה ודעת של אין סוף ברוך הוא, והעוסקו בה ממשיך עליו אור אין סוף ברוך הוא ביתר שאת והארה גדולה לאין קץ מהרה והמשכה על ידי פיקודים שהן איברין דמלכה. That's because Chabad of Ein Sof, right, the greatness of the Torah is actually greater. Yes, the whole point is that the mitzvot should be done, but it is the illumination of the blessed Ein Sof light then the illumination that one draws from his soul through mitzvot, which are only called organs, evarim damalka.
The vitality of the organs, yeah.
Yeah, they're not. V'zehu she'amar Rab Sheshet chadai nafshai lach karai lach tanai. I would not have been able to translate this myself. This is what Rav Sheshet meant when he said, "Rejoice, my soul, chadai nafshai. For you do I study scripture, for you do I study Mishnah. Lach karai, lach tanai." Okay. Kamo shenitba'ar b'makom acher ba'arichut, as is explained somewhere else at length. V'hinei hamshacha v'hara zu. Excuse me. Sha'adam mamshich u'me'ir meharat or ein sof baruch hu al nafsho v'al nafshot kol Israel. Hi hashchina knesset Israel makor kol nishmot Israel kamo she'yitbarer l'kaman. And this radiance which is brought down is what we refer to as the Shekhinah, as Knesset Israel, which is the source of the souls of all of Israel. Al Yedei Esek HaTorah Nikret Belashon Kriya. This is called calling, Koreh B'Torah. Koreh B'Torah, Perush. Shal Yedei Esek HaTorah Koreh LaKadosh Baruch Hu Lavo Alav Kaviyachol. We call this calling because through learning Torah, it's as if he's calling God down to him, so to speak. Adam hakoreh l'chavero sheyavo alav. Like a person says, I say, Ben, come, let's study Torah. Uvchen katan hakoreh la'aviv lavo alav. And same thing by a little child who says, Tati, come. Lihiot imo b'tzavta chada. To be with him closely, v'lo lipared mimenu v'lishaer yachidi chas v'shalom, that they should not leave him alone, God forbid. V'zehu shekatuv karov Hashem lachol korav. That's what it means when it says God is close to all who call upon him. Lachol asher yikrahu be'emet, all who call him truly. Ve'ein emet ela Torah. And truth is the Torah. The Hainu shekoreh l'Kadosh Baruch Hu al yedei haTorah davka. Right, when he calls to God through the Torah specifically. La'afuke mi shekoreh oto shelo al yedei esek haTorah ela tzoek kach Abba Abba. This is in contrast to someone who isn't doing it through the Torah, but rather just merely calling God Father, Father. Ukamo shekobel alav hanavi, like the prophet laments. Which prophet? Isaiah. Ve'ein koreh b'shimcha. They do not call your name. Ukamo shenetba'er b'makom acher, like we explained elsewhere, right? ומזה יתבונן המשכיל להמשיך עליו יראה גדולה בשעת עסק התורה. So someone who is intelligent will understand how important it is when he's studying Torah. כמו שנתבאר לעיל פרק כ"ג, like we explained in chapter 23. I was going a little quick at the end because I noticed we went over time. That's fine with me, but I didn't know if you had to leave.
Yeah, no, I was okay.
You're good. Yeah. So yeah.
This was good. It's interesting. I made me laugh a little bit in the first last stanzas, because he kept kind of like moving us from place to from one side of the paradox to the other. Like the Torah is more important than we did, but the doing is more important.
So that guy's more. Yeah.
Yes.
This is honestly this
which I guess is also the Talmud.
This is really, so like I've told you before, this is when I started realizing that Tanya is really cognitive behavioral therapy in a very real sense.
How so?
Because it teaches you to it trains you not to think of things in the cognitive distortions we're used to of splitting and thinking of things. Like, it teaches you to start viewing things in various ways and understand how it could be that, oh, Talmud Torah keneged kulam, right? Learning a Torah is the greatest of all. And at the same time, right, tzedakah keneged kulam, because each one has its greatness in its own way.
Yeah. At its own time.
Yeah.
Very nice. How's Shadow? Is she glad that the construction is done?
I don't know. Are you happy the construction's almost done? Well, I don't know if the construction's done. I think uh, the workman has been here since early in the morning, uh, which was very nice of him. He's been working like 12-hour days because,
Wow.
yeah, um, yeah. My apparently the guy I hired has lots of work for his workmen to do, and what can I say? There's a lot of people doing construction these days, and there are not enough tradesmen. That's for sure. So if you decide you want to go into the trades,
Yeah.
yeah,
I do want to learn woodworking, but yeah, not, it probably won't be a trade, a level of a trade, but yeah.
mm, yep. Okay, should I end the stream?
Yeah, I should probably.
I am
Oh,
going to end the stream.
thank you very much.